I wish daylight would come. I'm beginning to feel pretty chilly. How about you? Hello there? You haven't gone to sleep, have you? Hello?
No, I'm not asleep.
Thought you might have dozed off. I did a while ago. Eyes refused to stay open any longer. Couldn't imagine where I was when I woke up. I'd forgotten all about the damned wreck.
You are fortunate to be able to sleep. I wish I could go to sleep and forget all this.
Oh, come now. You mustn't keep thinking about it. That won't do any good. Brace up. We're sure to get out of this mess all right. I figured it all out. You know how long a time it was between the time we hit the derelict and... It was a derelict we hit, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Well, the wireless was going all the time, if you remember. And one of the officers told me we had lots of answers from ships saying they were on their way to help us. One of them is sure to pick us up.
In this fog.
Oh, this will all go away as soon as the sun goes up. I've seen plenty like it in my country house on the Connecticut shore. Well, maybe not as thick as this one, but nearly as bad. And when the sun came up, they all disappeared before the morning was over.
Forget, we are now near the Grand Banks, the home of fog.
I must say, you're not a very cheerful companion. Why don't you look at the bright side, huh? Grand Banks? Well, I refuse to be scared.
I have no intention of making your situation seem worse than it actually is. I have every hope that we will eventually be rescued, but it is better not to expect too much. It only makes disappointment more bitter when it comes.
I suppose you're right. But I can't help being optimistic.
You remember how disappointed you were yesterday when we failed to hear any sound of a ship? Today is liable to be the same unless this fog lifts, so don't hope for too much.
You're forgetting the fact that there was no sun yesterday. That kind of weather can't last forever.
Unless we could not see the sun on account of the fog.
I'll admit, I did feel pretty dismal yesterday. After that terrible thing.
You mean when the child died?
Yes. I thought that woman would never stop crying. Ah, it was awful. Her cries in the fog and not another sound anywhere.
It's the most horrible thing I have ever seen, or even heard of. I never imagined anything could be so full of tragedy.
It was enough to give anyone the blues, that's sure. Besides, my clothes were wet and I was freezing cold. You can imagine how merry I felt. Not that they're any drier now, but somehow I feel warmer.
So you think the child's death was a terrible thing?
Of course. Why, don't you?
No.
But you said just a minute ago
I was
that...
speaking of the grief and despair of the mother. But death was kind to the child. Saved him many a year of sordid drudgery.
I don't know as I agree with you there. Everyone has a chance in this world, but we've all got to work hard, of course. That's the way I figure it out.
What chance had that poor child, naturally sickly and weak from underfeeding, transplanted to a stinking room in a tenement or a filthy hovel in a mining village? What glowing opportunities did life hold out that death should not be considered a blessing for that poor child? Assuming he had ordinary amount of ability and intelligence, surely his prospects of being anything but a beast of burden were not bright, were they?
Well, no, of course not, but...
If you could bring him back to life, would you do so? Could you conscientiously drag him away from that fine sleep of his to face what he would have to face had he lived? Leaving the joy you would bring to the mother out of the question, would you do it for him individually?
Perhaps not. Looking at it from that standpoint.
There is no other standpoint. The child was afflicted at birth with a hereditary ill that only the most vital men are able to shake off.
You mean...
I mean poverty, the most prevalent and deadly of all diseases.
Oh, that's it, eh? It seems to be a pretty necessary sickness, and one you'll hardly find a cure for. I see you're a bit of a reformer.
No. There are times when the grave injustice of it sickens me with life in general.
I find life pretty good. I don't know as I'd change it even if I could.
Spoken like a successful man. For you are a successful man, are you not? I mean, in a worldly way?
Yes, you might call me so, I guess. I made my little pile, but it was no easy time getting it, let me tell you.
You had some advantages, did you not? Clean home, plenty to eat, education, and so forth?
I went to school, and of course had the other things you mentioned. My people were not exactly what you could call poor, but they were certainly not rich. Why do you ask?
Do you think you would be as successful and satisfied with life if you had started with handicaps like those which that poor child would have had to face had he lived?
I don't know. What's the use of talking about what might have happened? I'm not responsible for the way the world is run.
Supposing you are responsible.
What?
Supposing we, the self-satisfied, successful members of society, are responsible for the injustice laid upon the heads of our less fortunate brothers in Christ because of our shameful indifference to it. We see misery all around us. We do not care. We do nothing to prevent it. Are we not then, in part at least, responsible for it? Have you ever thought of that?
No. And I'm not going to start in thinking about it now.
I see. It's a case of what is Hecuba to you that you should weep for her.
Hecuba? Well, you mean the woman? She can hardly accuse me of any heartlessness there. Why, I never felt so sorry for anyone in my life. I was actually crying myself at one time. I felt so sorry for her. By the way, she hasn't made a sound since it got dark last evening. Is she asleep? Can you see her? You're nearer to her than I am.
She is very still. She must be asleep. I hope so, poor woman.
Yes, a little sleep will do her a world of good.
She still holds the child close to her breast. I don't suppose
Excuse my interrupting you, but have you noticed how light it's getting? It didn't strike me until you turned around just now.
Now, if this fog would only lift.
It's going to lift. You wait and see. You'll find my optimism is justified. But what was it you started to say?
I was saying I suppose you'd never seen this woman on board.
No. I was in the smoking room playing bridge most of the time. I'm not much of a sailor. Don't care much about the water. Just went over to Europe because the wife and the girls insisted. Was bored to death. Made an excuse to get away as soon as I could. No, sir, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm a businessman, pure and simple. The farther away I get from that business, the more dissatisfied I am. I built that business up from nothing, sort of like a child of mine. Gives me pleasure to watch over it. And when I'm away, I'm uneasy. I don't like to leave it in strange hands. As for traveling, little old New York and the USA is good enough for me. But you asked if I had seen the woman. I don't think so. because I never went down into the steerage. I know some of the first-class passengers did, but I wasn't curious. It's a filthy sort of hole, isn't it?
It's not so bad. I spent a good deal of my time down there.
In your role of reformer?
No, simply because I found the people in the steerage more interesting to talk to than the second-class passengers. I am not a reformer. At least not in the professional sense.
Do you mind my asking what particular line you were in?
I am a writer.
I thought it was something of the kind. I knew you weren't in business when I heard those socialistic ideas of yours. Beautiful idea, socialism, but too impractical. Never come about, just a dream.
I'm not a socialist. Especially. I am a humanist. That is all.
What particular kind of writing do you do?
I write poetry.
Oh, I see. Well, there's not much money in that, is there?
No.
I don't know about you, but I'm beginning to feel hungry. Is that box of crackers near you? Never thought hardtack could taste so good. Aren't you going to have any?
No. Thought of that poor woman takes all my hunger away. I used to watch her every day down in the steerage playing with their small son, who is now dead. The look on her face was so wonderfully tender as she bent over him. What will her life be now that death has taken away the only recompense for her slavery? It seems as needless cruelty. I mean, why was I not taken instead? I who have no family or friends to weep and am not afraid to die.
You take things to heart too much. That's just like a poet. She'll forget all about it. Probably sooner than you will. One forgets everything in time. What a devil of a world it would be if we didn't. Funny thing when you come to think of it. I mean, how we happened to come together in this boat. It's a mystery how she ever got in here. And then, how is it there's no oars, and still there's plenty of food? You remember there was no lack of lifeboats. And after the women and children were taken off, I was ordered into one and we were rowed away. Well, the damn thing must have gotten smashed somehow, for it leaked like a sieve. In spite of our bailing, we were soon dumped in the water. I heard the noise of voices near us. We tried to swim to one of the other boats. But I must have got twisted in the fog. For when I did find a boat, and believe me, I was nearly all in about then. It was this one, and you and she were in it. Now what I want to know is...
It is easily explained. Do you ever find yourself so sick of disappointment and weary of life in general that you thought death the only way out?
Hardly. But what does that to do with...
Listen and you will see. That is the way I felt. Sick and weary of soul and longing for sleep. When the ship hit that derelict, I thought it providential. Here was the opportunity I'd been looking for. I would go down with the ship, and that small part of the world which knew me would think my death an accident.
You mean to say you were going to
I was
commit...
going to die, yes. So I hid in the steerage, fearing that some of the ship's officers would insist on saving my life in spite of me. Finally, when everyone had gone, I came out and walked around the deck. I heard voices coming from a dark corner and found this woman and her child had been left behind. Well, how that happened, I don't know. Probably she hid, fearing that the child would be crushed by the terror-stricken immigrants. At any rate, I thought she was so happy in her love for her child that it would be wrong to let her die. So I looked around and I saw this lifeboat had been lowered down to the deck and left hanging there. Well, the oars had been taken out, probably for rowers and some other boat. I convinced the woman to climb in, and I went up to the boat deck and lowered the boat the rest of the way down to the water. This was not much of a task, since the steamer was sinking lower and lower in the water every minute. I slid down one of the ropes to the boat, cutting free both of the lines, pushed off. There was a faint breeze which slowly blew us away from the ship until it was lost in the fog. The suspense of waiting for her to go down was terrible. Even as it was, we were nearly swamped with waves when the steamer took her final plunge.
I hope you've abandoned that suicide idea.
Oh, I have, absolutely. I think everything that's happened to me is an omen. That my past unhappiness is past, and my fortune will change for the better.
Well, that's the way to talk. Superstition is a good thing sometimes.
And if I had known the sufferings that would be inflicted on that poor woman as a result of my reckless life-saving, I'd have let her go down with the ship and gone with it myself.
Don't think about it any longer. You couldn't help that. I wonder what it was the child died of. I thought it was asleep when I heard it choke and cough. And then she began to scream. I'll never forget those screams for the rest of my life.
The child was frail and delicate, and I suppose the fright he received combined with the exposure to bring on some kind of convulsion. He was dead when I went over to see what was the matter.
It's getting lighter. Must be about time for the sun to rise, if we're going to have any sun.
It's around this time yesterday morning when the poor little fellow died.
Let's not talk any more about it. She might wake up and start screaming again, and I can't stand that.
She does not understand English.
She'd know we were talking about the kid just the same. Mothers have an instinct when it comes to that. I've seen that proved in my own family more than once.
Have you ever lost any of your own children?
No, thank God.
Well, you may well indeed thank God, even if people do, as you claimed earlier, forget so easily.
You're not married, are you?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think you were. You people with artistic temperaments run more to affinities than to wives. I suppose you've lots of those.
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
Just now, when you were talking, I heard a sound. I thought it sounded like a steamer's whistle.
My God, it is a steamer.
Sounded closer that time. She must be coming this way.
If only this rotten fog would lift for a minute.
Oh, let's hope it will. We run as much risk of being run down as we do of being saved while this continues.
Can't we do something? Can't we yell to them or make some kind of a noise?
They couldn't hear us, so we can try when they get closer. Cold the air is. Is it my imagination?
No, I've noticed it too. Been freezing to death for the last 5 minutes. I wish we had the oars so we could row and keep warm.
Shh. Do you hear that?
What, the whistle? I heard it just a moment ago.
No, this is a sound like running water. There, do you hear it now?
Yes, I hear it, but what can it be? There isn't any water out here except what's under us. Oh, but it's chilly.
Poor woman, she'll be frozen when she wakes up.
It sounds louder every minute, but I can't see anything. Oh, damn this fog.
Suppose it could be land, but I can't imagine we could have drifted that far.
Good God, what's that?
An iceberg, steady! You'll be in the water in a minute if you're not careful. Lucky for us, it's calm, or we would be dashed to pieces.
As it is, we'll only freeze to death. Is that what you mean?
It is cold. I wonder how big the berg is. Help me try to push the boat away from it.
Oh, my hands are freezing.
It's no use. The boat is too heavy and you can get no grip on the ice. Oh my God. I never thought of that.
Never thought of what?
The steamer, man, the steamer. Think of the danger she is in. If she were ever to hit this mass of ice, she would sink before she could lower a boat.
Can't we do something? We'll yell to them when they get nearer.
Oh my God, man, don't do that. This may be one of the ships sent to rescue survivors from our boat, and if they heard any cries, they would think they were shouts for help, and they would come right this direction. Not a sound if you have any regard for the lives of those on board.
But if we don't let them know we're here, they'll able to pass by us and never know it.
We can die, but we cannot risk the lives of those on board to save our own. God, she must be right on top of us.
She's going away. I'm not going to let you to die on account of your damn fool ideas.
Damn coward! I might have known what to expect.
I'll get even with you, you loafer. If we ever get on shore. She must have hit it after all.
No, that can't be it. I don't hear any shouts. I know what this is. The berg. It's melting. It's breaking apart. That was a piece that fell in the water.
It could have landed on us. I'm not going to stand for this any longer. We'll be crushed like flies. I'll take a chance to swim for it. You can stay here and be left to die if you want to.
You could swim for 5 minutes in that icy water.
This is all right for you. You want to die. You want to kill us too, you murderer?
Come. Be sensible. Act like a man.
She seems to be quite near us again.
A moment ago, I heard a sound like oars creaking in oarlocks, striking the water.
Maybe they lowered a boat.
There's the steamer now. Oh, she can't be more than a quarter of a mile away. What luck!
And there's the boat you heard. Look, they were rowing toward us.
I wonder how they knew we were here.
Hello there!
Hello!
Are you people off the shore?
Yes! You see? My optimism was justified after all. I wish you would forget the little unpleasantness between us. I must admit I was a bit rattled and didn't exactly know what I was doing.
I'd already forgotten that.
Thank you. Hello! You certainly are a welcome sight.
You picked out a funny island to land on. What made you cling so close to this bird? Cold, wasn't it?
We drifted into it in the fog, and having no oars, could not get away. It was around the same time we first heard your whistle.
Woman sick?
She's been asleep. Poor woman.
Where's the kid?
In her arms. But how did you know?
We'd never have found you but for that. Why didn't you give us a shout? Make some kind of a racket.
We were afraid you would come in our direction and hit this iceberg.
We might have passed you and never had an inkling.
In a case of that kind, one has to take chances.
Well, that's very fine of you, I must say. Most people would only have thought of themselves. As it was, if it hadn't been for the kid crying, we would have missed you. I was on the bridge with the first officer. We had been warned about this berg. And when the fog came up, we slowed down until we were barely creeping. Stopped altogether every now and then. I was during one of these stops, when everything was still. We first heard the crying. I said to the first officer, "That sounds like a kid bawling, doesn't it?" He thought it did too. It kept getting plainer and plainer till there was no chance for a mistake. Weird, too, it sounded. With everything so quiet, and the fog so heavy. Well, I said to him again, "That's a kid sure enough, but how in the devil did it get out here?" Then we both remembered. We had been ordered to keep a lookout for any of the survivors of the Starland who hadn't been picked up yet. First officer said, "It's probably some of the poor devils off the Starland." Told me to have a boat lowered. I grabbed a compass and jumped in. We could hear the kid crying all the time, couldn't we, boys?
Yes, sir.
That's how I was able to shape such a direct course for you. I was steering by the sound. Stopped just as the fog rose. Yeah, that's right. Better wake her up. The steamer will be ready to pick us up in a minute. She must be stiff with the cold. I'll make a line fast to this boat. We'll tow her back to the ship.
Poor happy woman.
Well?
The woman is dead.
Dead. Too bad. But the child is all right, of course.
The child has been dead for 24 hours. He died at dawn yesterday.
Bit out of his head, isn't he? Exposure. Affects a lot of them that way.
He told you the exact truth of the matter.
Of course. Coming in here? Gonna stay where you are. Cheerful beggar.
I think I will stay with the dead.
Give way all!
That's the exact truth. So you see that if you will pardon my saying so, officer, what you've just finished telling us is almost unbelievable.